At least I got the right decision on that CSL news article.
The live stream is on.
Hello.
You blew in?
What's that?
I say you blew in?
Yeah, wow, it's something up there.
One of those days you don't want to be beside assembly when you start to
Yeah.
go like this.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful, thanks. Do you have any coffees and stuff like that?
Sorry, having decaf, you said?
Oh,
But going on auditing?
I know. Shoot, can I do redo? It's just that audit is so stimulating.
Yeah, get your caffeine down.
There you go, good fix. Just let this plug in from earlier.
All right, you guys get ready to get started? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:59. And I'll get started with our territorial acknowledgement. The town of Coldhurst is located on traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and the traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. All right, so let's just start here with the adoption of the previous minutes. Can somebody make a motion to adopt the previous minutes?
I'll make that motion, but I did need to have corrections on
Sure.
those minutes, please. So you'll note in the council members' reports that there were no reports made of my activities. Unless am I missing a portion of my package? I'm not sure. I had indicated that I had attended the Green Acres Executive, the Orsk Council orientation, as well as the Green Acres regular and the Colhurst Recreation and Culture Committee meetings. So if those can be included in the minutes with the other council reports, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Green Acres, Orsk, and what?
Green Acres Executive, the Orsk Council orientation, and the Colhurst Recreation and Culture Committee meeting. Thank you. Thanks, Leslie.
Great, so you made that motion with the amendment?
So I will make that motion with the addition of those items, unless there was anything else that was required to be added to that. Or...
All right, any other discussion? Question, all in favor? That's carried, thank you.
Thank you.
And so now would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I can make that motion. I move to adopt the agenda as circulated.
Any discussion?
I just want to pull from correspondence, the thing about barrier-free Alberta, and then another thing, if possible, for the Public Works Week.
Is that under,
They're both under the other business, or sorry,
correspondence?
correspondence.
What are they? Why can't I see this? What is specific number?
Are you talking?
They'll be the ones that are added at the back.
The very back.
Okay, great, so we can chat about those.
Thank you.
And I was hoping if we could have a brief discussion maybe about the item 6, or was it 8D, collecting education property taxes.
Sure. All right, any other discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. All right, so we have our delegation today is Mark DeBloy. Did I say that right?
DeBlois.
Oh, okay, completely not right, but thank you so much for correcting me. I'm very, not French. So there we go.
Neither am I.
Well, thank you for coming today to present to us on the 2021 financial statements. And we'll just turn it right over to you. And
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your meeting to allow me to be here to present the results of the audit for the town for the year ended December 31st, 2021. Subject to the council approving the financial statements, we're prepared to issue a clear opinion on your financial statements. Our opinion will read, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the town as at December 31st, 2021, and its results of operations, changes in net financial assets, and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. I'd like to just walk through the statements and make a few high-level comments. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to stop me as I go. As I see a few new faces here from the last time I presented, I'll maybe explain a little bit of what each of these statements means. So the first statement you'll see is the statement of financial position. The statement of financial position is a snapshot of the financial assets, liabilities, and non-financial assets of the town as at December 31st. Financial assets are assets that are converted into cash in the normal course of operations. Your total financial assets were $12.9 million, very consistent with where you were at this time last year. The components, cash and cash equivalents, make up 11.7 million of this, taxes receivable, 137,000, and trade and other receivables of $1 million. The liabilities, financial liabilities, are liabilities that are settled liabilities regardless of when they're to be settled. Your accounts payable and accrued liabilities, $357,000. Deferred revenue, and we'll go through a little bit of this in the notes. Deferred revenue is primarily revenue that you've received where you have not met the stipulations of that revenue in order to have it recognized in the statement of operations. Your deferred revenue at the December 31st was $1.55 million. Deposit liabilities, $332,000, again, very consistent with last year. And then your long-term debt. So this is your debenture debt in full, not just, which is paid over several years at $3.6 million. The financial assets less the liabilities brings you to net financial assets. And net financial assets basically means that the town has resources in order to continue to develop certain or provided services and continue other programs and projects as the case may be. At December 31st, your net financial assets were $7 million compared to $6.2 million in the prior year. Non-financial assets are the assets that are consumed in the delivery of your services, primarily your equipment, buildings, roads, those types of things. Your tangible capital assets, net of depreciation, at December 31st were $29.1 million compared to $28 million in the prior year.
So that's, I apologize, that's the depreciation?
Yes,
29
yes.
versus 28?
Yeah. Then that brings us to accumulated surplus of $36.1 million. So accumulated surplus is made up of the investment in tangible capital assets, the restricted reserves that you have set aside, as well as the unrestricted surplus. And we'll go through that in the notes. The next statement is the statement of operations. This statement looks at the operations of the town for the year compared to both budget and the prior year. If you look at your revenue, total revenue is $4.6 million compared to $5 million in the prior year and 6.5 for the budget. And when we look at the difference in the budget to actual, primarily the difference is made up of the difference in government transfers for operating activities. You budgeted $2.3 million and actually recognized $334,000. So that's the grants that you receive that are for specific purposes. If those purposes are not completed, then the amount stays in deferred revenue. Everything else is fairly consistent year on year. When we look at the expenses are broken out here by department or function. Your total expenses for the year were $4,229,000 compared to $4.1 million budget and $4.3 in the prior year. So again, the expenses are fairly consistent year on year and with budget. That leaves you with an operating surplus of $422,000. You then had your government transfers for capital, so those are your capital grants. You budgeted $2.2 million. You actually recognized $1.4 million of government grants or capital grants. And that is the grants that were, of course, you've met the terms of the grants, so we've recognized it as revenue. That leaves you with a surplus for the year of $1,891,000, bringing your accumulated surplus at the end of the year to $36.1.
Just a quick question on there. Under expenses administration on the budget, you just have $680,000 and then your actual is $1.65 million. Is there a one missing?
No, that is accurate. The biggest difference that you would see there is in the budgeting for amortization. If you flip to page 22, you'll see the expenses by object.
Okay.
And so amortization is not budgeted for, and it's just over $1 million. So that's really what your difference is. The next statement is a statement of net change or changes in net financial assets. So your statement of operations does not include capital expenditures. So that's why you show a surplus. Of that surplus, there is funds that were spent on capital projects and capital assets. So this statement starts with your excess of revenue over expenses of $1,891,000, and then you'll see the acquisition of tangible capital assets. So that's the money that was spent on those capital assets, $2.1 million. You add back amortization expense, which is a non-cash expense, the loss on disposal of or gain on disposal of tangible capital assets, and the proceeds on tangible capital assets to bring you to $828,000 being your change in net financial assets for the year. And that's really the key figure for you when you're looking at how the town is doing and where you're using your resources. So even though you had a surplus of almost $1.9 million, that doesn't include your capital expenditures. So if you look at the change in your net financial assets, that's really a more critical amount that's going to tell you how the town did in terms of using its resources for the purposes intended. The next statement is a statement of cash flows. So this statement takes your surplus for the year and breaks it down in terms of the inflows and outflows of cash. So from operating activities, you had a cash inflow of $1,943,000. Capital activities, you had a cash outflow of $2,072,000. And financing activities, you spent about $150,000 servicing debt. That leaves you with the decrease in cash for the year of $279,000, bringing your cash balance at the end of the year to $11.7 million. In the notes to the financial statements, the first note is the significant accounting policies. There's been no change in your accounting policies this year. The statements are prepared on a consistent basis with the policies that were in place in the prior year. Note 2 on page 8 is the new proposed accounting pronouncements. So these are accounting pronouncements or new standards that are going to be coming into play that may affect the town in the future. When we look at the new standards coming up, there's one on page 9, note 2E, asset retirement obligations. This is the one that's probably going to have the biggest impact on the town. So basically what this requires is where you have an asset and then there's going to be an obligation in the future to retire that asset, such as a water treatment plant or a sewage lagoon or something like that. You're required when the standard comes into play for, I guess that would be fiscal 2023. When this standard comes into play, you'll be required to record as part of the asset that cost to retire it in the future, and then it gets amortized or depreciated to income over time, and then you record the liability. So that's something that Kim and his team will be focused on this year. Back in 2012, we had the change to tangible capital assets getting recorded on your balance sheet. This is a standard that's not quite that large in scope, but it's fairly close.
Is it the same basic concept though? Like, can we use the same resources that we have for that?
Well, it's a starting point because that tangible capital assets has your plant ledger. So now it's a matter of going through that plant ledger and saying which of these assets are going to have a cost to retire them. So if you have a truck, I mean, you sell it or you trade it in. If you have a water treatment plant or a sewage lagoon, at some point you're going to have to reclaim that asset, and there's going to be a cost to do that. A transfer station for garbage, those types of things would all have these types of costs, as well as buildings may have asbestos in them. So yeah, it's a big job, and I'm sure you'll reach out to us in due course when you want to talk about that. Note 4 talks about your taxes receivable. So you can see that the current taxes receivable very consistent with the prior year at $100,000, and arrears taxes at 36. So there was some ground made up on the arrears taxes, but the current taxes stayed relatively consistent. Note 6 talks about the deferred revenue. So this just goes through your deferred revenue, which is primarily grant revenue, and starts with the balance. You had $2.3 million of grant revenue at the beginning of the year that you hadn't recognized in revenue. This is money, this is grants where you received the cash, you just haven't met the terms of the grant. You received an additional $931,000 of grants funding in the year. There was some interest earned on those grants of about $30,000. And then the amounts that were recognized as revenue were $1,803,000. Bringing your balance at the end of the year to $1,524,000. Then included in deferred revenue, you've got your prepaid tax revenue. So these are the people that are paying their taxes either monthly or in advance. Started with $31,000. You collected another $33,000. $31,000 was recognized as revenue, and now this $33,000 will be recognized in 2022. If you flip over to the next page, there's a couple grant envelopes that the town has available to them. One is the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, the MSI. With this program, the province sets aside a certain amount of funds for the town. As the town submits projects that they want to complete, the province will release the funds for those projects. So you had at the beginning of the year unpaid allocations of about $1.8 million. You had no new capital contributions or projects approved. And then you had your annual allocation for 2021 of $725,000 bringing the amount that you're able to access to $2,557,000. On the second one is the gas tax fund. Again, similarly, you had $483,000 of grant funds available to be requested. You had your projects submitted, $306,000, and then your annual allocation of $325,000, bringing your unpaid allocations at the end of the year to $503,000. So the town has about $3 million of funding available to it as those projects come to light.
Just a question on that then, that, like, we haven't received that money, is that what you're saying?
Yes, you haven't received it yet, so
Okay.
you'd have to submit your project, and
Yeah.
then you'll receive the funding, and then you
Okay.
can start your projects.
All right, thank you.
So it's over and above what you've got in deferred revenue that you've received, you
Okay.
just haven't spent yet.
Great, thank you.
Note 7, long-term debt. So your long-term debt, your tax-supported debentures at December 31st were $3,559,000, and your self-supported debentures were $87,000. So self-supported debentures are things like utility debentures where you're collecting funds or fees in order to support the service of that debt. And then there's a table showing the payments that you're going to make over the next 5 years and to maturity of the loans. The long-term debt that you have is comprised of debt that was used for capital projects of $2.7 million, debt that was used to acquire land of $636,000, and then your unspent debt proceeds of $270,000. Note 8 on page 13 is your accumulated surplus. So accumulated surplus of $36 million represents $26.4 million of equity and tangible capital assets. So that basically means that the net book value of your tangible capital assets less the loans or debenture debt against that. That's the equity that the town has in those assets. You then have about $7.1 million of assets set aside in reserve, and then your unrestricted surplus is $2.6 million. The note gives some information in terms of what the reserves are set aside for, what areas, and then the equity and tangible capital assets, how that number is calculated. Note 9 on page 14 is the salary and benefits disclosure note. And what this note does is it shows the amounts that were paid to elected officials as well as designated officers. So the town has the chief administrative officer is a designated officer, as is the assessor. And it just shows the amount paid compared to the prior year. And you can see that it's very consistent. For the elected officials, the total amount paid is $89,000. In the prior year, it was $73,000. And some of that relates to, a bit of the opening up for additional meetings that you can go to and those types of things. So attending on town business. Note 10 on page 15 is your debt limits. The debt limits is basically written out in the MGA that the amount that the town is able to borrow without seeking ministerial approval. So the town's total debt limit is just shy of $7 million. The total debt that you have, 3.6, leaves an amount of unused debt limit of $3.3 million. The second test is the debt servicing of that. So your debt service limit is 1.1. The current debt service or annual principal and interest payments that are required is 266. So that leaves you with an amount of unused debt service of $896,000. So basically you could borrow $3.3 million so long as it doesn't cost you more than $896,000 to service it on an annual basis. The rest of the notes are here for information. So I'm just going to flip ahead to some of the schedules. Where am I now? On page 22 is the schedule of expenses by object. So on the statement of operation, you showed the expenses by functional area. This is the type of expense. And you can see that the town's largest expense is salaries and benefits. There's also an expense in there for amortization, which I mentioned is not budgeted. And then your contracted general services and materials and goods and supplies are the big ones. You also have your transfers to local boards and agencies, and it gives you an idea of what the town is spending its dollars on. And that's basically the financial statements.
All right, does anyone have any additional questions?
Yeah, so in terms of there's no risk within our practices or?
I'm going to go over a document.
Oh.
Kim was this?
I didn't circulate that.
Circulate?
So it's to be-
Okay, so I'll just speak to it.
Oh.
It's a document for your reading pleasure. Kim has copies. It's more just setting out some of the things in the town that we've looked at in our audit, as well as what we call our management letter points. And management letter points are things where we see improvements that the town can make, or in some cases, we've got one that we've had here for years for segregation of duties. And then based on the size of the town, it's sometimes difficult for the functional areas to have proper segregation of duties. So a person could be in the position to initiate a transaction, approve a transaction, and settle a transaction, which normally you'd have those three things being done by different people. But given the size of the town, it doesn't make sense to hire three people to do that, carry out those processes, because the cost isn't the benefit isn't there for the cost. However, having said that, that's where your roles as elected officials become very important in terms of when you're reviewing the financial information, when you're approving projects, or when you're approving transactions, because that's part of the control processes that the town relies on. The second one that we have here is deals with cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is not that we saw anything at the town that we said was a risk. It's just more, again, for your information. You'll see a lot of cyber crimes and the prevalence of those becoming more and more each and every day. And they're very sophisticated. So it's something that you want to make sure that the town is on top of in terms of making sure that your systems, your networks are all secure, your firewalls are in place and working, and someone's actually monitoring that. If you're using anything in the cloud, you're looking at the reports that the cloud providers are giving in terms of their controls and their processes. Those types of things are very, very important. In addition, it's the phishing schemes that we're seeing are very sophisticated, where somebody will say, okay, the town is doing a capital project, and we can see that this is one of your subcontractors or contractors, and then the criminals will then try to get you to divert funds from going to payment to that company to a fraudulent bank account. And we see this quite often. I don't know if if you've seen it. Was it the city of Saskatoon? I think it was a few years ago, where they were struck by this, and that's a much larger municipality with a much larger staff, and it just shows you that nobody's immune from this, and it's something that you have to really be aware of. So things like having your staff and elected officials be educated in terms of the risks that you have. If you get an email and you're not sure who the email's from, don't open it, don't click on the attachments, all those things that we hear all the time. But yet when people get busy, they tend to lose sight of those things that they know, and things can happen. The last thing you want, because you do have a lot of private information on your networks, you want to make sure that you're not getting anyone getting into your networks to do some evil deeds with that information. And that's something that we're seeing. There was a municipality in Alberta that was struck, where someone got into their network, and they're now trying to find out if there was anything taken or if there was any damage done to the people's information that they're holding. So again, very, very topical thing, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So something that you want to make sure you're aware of. And I do have some documents in the appendices of this report for you to look at as well.
Can I ask, would it be a value while you're going through that, would there be a value in us having a copy of that?
There is copies for you, but they're just not for public consumption.
Yeah,
So-
so if we had a copy to look at this evening while we're going through that, would that be a value to do that this way? Or how short is your presentation on this? Is that?
I'm just about done.
All right.
Yeah, well, it's the things that we have, we don't really have a presentation on cyber risks. We just have some information for you to
Yeah.
consider. And if there's something that you think that you would like to discuss further, we're happy to discuss that with you. And there's a, it's, the town wouldn't have its own IT department. So you're likely having to outsource some of these reviews to make sure your networks are secure and you're not prone to any cyber crime. And that's something that ideally the province would start providing some funding for, because it is getting to be more commonplace that we see these crimes occurring. The last point that I have, it deals with funds held in trust. And it's a carry forward from the prior year, and I'm sure Kim has been on top of this. So just making sure that the town record assets and corresponding liabilities for the tax sale and the tax sales when the properties are being held in trust. So the MGA has rules on your tax sales, and making sure that you have a historical record of what the funds are that you're holding in trust and what the properties are that you have in tax sale. And that's everything that I had for my presentation tonight. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Forrest.
I just had a question about when you were talking about policies. It's on page 5. So when you're talking about significant accounting policies, is it typical that you would recommend policies if there wasn't?
No. So basically what happens is the standards set out the policies that a municipality would select. And in some of them, there's selections that you can make between the standards. You can choose option A or option B. For the town, most of the standards that you select are fairly straightforward and applicable to any municipality. So your accounting standards are really no different than virtually any municipality in Alberta. But just when there's new standards that are coming into play, that's when we will assist management to get their plan in place and what they need to do in order to adopt those policies.
Okay, so, and sorry, just to clarify, as part of it's not like you go through as part of your auditing process, you don't go through the accounting policies?
We do
Okay.
go through the accounting policies to make sure they're consistent, there's been no changes, and they're appropriate for the town.
Okay.
So if you said, for instance, in your amortization, you could use a straight line basis. And if you said, well, I want to change that to, using it, something that's entirely unrelated, then we might look at that and say, is that appropriate in these circumstances? And then that's where we would do some additional work and report back to you. Yeah. And quite often, the things that we look for would be things like bias. So if management is saying, hey, we get bonuses, which you don't, but if we get bonuses based on our surplus, well, we want to select policies that are going to make our surplus as high as possible. So we're not recognizing expenses as quickly as we otherwise might have to do. There's nothing in there like that here, but that's an example of where we would look at bias and say, that's something we need to report to those with governance oversight.
Thank you. Any other questions? All good?
Yeah, I'm curious, on our debt, are those fixed interest rates like I hear the government's increasing interest
Yeah.
rates?
So your borrowing is all with it used to be the Alberta Capital Finance Authority, and now it's just part of the provincial government through the Treasury. And so all of the loans are set at fixed rates for the duration of the loan. So they don't reprice with the market.
Go ahead.
I just have a question about process. It was something we were kind of talking about earlier. So what typically is the process? Like you present and then we approve this at this meeting, or is it typical?
Yeah, so what'll happen is normally if you decide to approve the statements, you'd pass a motion. There's a couple of things that have to be filed with the province by May 1st. So one of them is we have to send a copy of the financial statements and what's called the financial information return. And once the statements are approved, we're able to submit those on your behalf.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
I can make that motion. I'll move that the audit report and financial statements for the town of Colbers for the year ended December 31st, 2021 be accepted as presented by KPMG.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
I do have to get a couple of signatures. Can I borrow Kim for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
We went through some of that cyber concern with Green Acres, that's why I was asking so many questions of risk. So somebody says that they have access and then they sort of hold that information for ransom.
Yeah.
But we were able to shut it down, but
We have a lot of those types of things that we're going to do, so.
Like there's this one company that will send out a fake one, right?
Yeah.
And see when people click on it.
That's what our IT department does.
Our part does.
Gotcha.
We did that too, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. I did it. I was like, oh, that seems relevant to me. Click.
And then with us, they make us retake the training. That's the punishment.
Yeah.
It's so good.
This big skull and crossbone heaves up, and I was like, just kidding. I was
You're
like,
like,
oh.
The biggest thing I learned when I took one is that if you like get ransomware, you don't turn your computer off because they can usually recover the key. If you restart your computer, you can't recover it, but if you leave it on, it's more likely to be recoverable. If you get ransomware.
see, I always get worried as soon as I see something unsavory, I just shut everything down. Maybe don't penetrate my computer, you stop it. That's just immediately my thoughts.
No, mine too. So those surprised to get that.
Great, thank you.
We started.
Right, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and presenting. That wasn't that painful, right? Oh, you just lost your name.
No, I just lost my name. Extra service here.
Yeah. I'll add it to the bill.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, good night.
Thanks, have a good night. All right, so we'll move on here. So let's go on to our business arising from previous minutes. So on here we have the Alberta Environment and Parks regarding the waterworks system inspection report. Arcade, did you want to speak to that at all?
Briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. So basically, I just put a copy of the report in here. It's a biannual sort of report that Alberta Environment and Parks does with our Director of Operations. And so basically it's indicated in here, a very good report, successful in all categories. The score in terms of 3 to 4, and Kevin talking with the individual who did the report. In some cases, it's a matter of if you sent some extra things, extra tests or some extra stuff to that effect, which the report does kind of indicate. They don't really tell you that ahead of time, that to get 4, this is what you should do. So he was a little ticked at that in the sense of, because he likes to do things, as per what they're supposed to be, which is understandable. So like I said, he's done nothing wrong. It's just, they just said on some of these things, that's what it would take to get the 4. So he said, well, for future, that's what it takes. I can throw in a couple of these things here or there and we'll be fine. So, but other than that, nothing really of any significance to report, as you can see.
So we bounced in all
Yeah.
areas, which is good.
Yeah.
Super interesting though, just to look at our daily peak flows and our daily average flows for the population our size. I mean, boy, we're just doing so good, right?
There's a lot of stuff to keep tabs on.
Yeah.
I think it's really great too that Kevin was acknowledged in the letter. And so he's clearly doing some great work. So pass on my kudos for that. I think that's excellent. Councilor Archibald, did you have something?
Yeah, just a question on, I think it's question 25 on the report there, they're talking about the drinking water safety plan. There's a comment saying the drinking water safety plan is an ongoing document that is outlined, updated annually and reviewed by council. So I was just curious, what is our practice with regards to that? Is that something that comes up yearly for us to kind of review? I guess I just haven't really seen anything on there, and then seeing that it was an annual thing that's reviewed by council, I just have a little bit more information on that process, or where they are at on that.
That was what number again, did you?
Number 25.
So we've been in place a couple of months. I love that you just are like a sponge for information, but the rest of us have to take our time, okay?
Yeah, I guess my comment to that, I'll talk to Kevin. I know he has obviously a plan in place. I can't recall necessarily what's come forward to council that regularly, but definitely I can talk to him and certainly we can bring that forward and see, show what he's got for sure, so.
Sounds good.
Great, any other questions? No, okay. So let's move on now to our committee minutes. So we'll start with MSBA. Is there anything that anyone on that committee would like to highlight? If not, that's okay too.
Sorry, from MSDA.
Yes, or any questions anyone has?
Yes, I have some questions about that. If I may. Sorry, I lost my agenda. Just with some of the enforcement stuff. I had a question about I'm sorry, here we go, number 2, under number 4.2, number 2. Was there any further follow-up on that, or was that it?
So, we had a meeting today, there was no update on that.
Okay, I just, that was, to me, it kind of stuck out as like a funny thing, because I was like, there must have been some reports of,
So I'll tell you the story of it. Apparently there was, the neighbor was complaining and they were not friends.
Oh.
And so when the bylaw officer went to go visit the place, there was no visible signage or visible evidence of any home occupation. So I think I believe somebody had, maybe there was a fight and they looked online and there's no record of any business at that address that we could find, that the administration could find. So we're not sure actually if there was a business or if it's just somebody thought there was a business or if there's a neighborly dispute and then they just tried to throw that in there. So
interesting.
I think there was, we're not sure exactly what happened.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as our development officer was concerned, that they had done their job to try and find out and given them notice, but it wasn't, I'm not sure if there's any even business there, so.
Okay.
They've been notified.
Thank you.
Jim, another one?
Yeah, I had a question about number 3, actually. Just in the point there, it's talking about not parking on landscaping. Is that specific to the Greenwood subdivision, or is it all over town?
I think,
So it talks about
Yeah.
coordinating the traffic bylaw to state you can't park on landscaping.
Yeah, and if you look at our land use bylaws, I think that it's going to be in every residential, is it not, okay?
so this is what it comes down to is the, so we talked about the driveway width, that one house that is extra wide. And so what I think a number of driveways have done, and she's noted 2, at least, maybe more, but what they've done is concrete is not considered landscaping, so they've put maybe pavers or some gravel, that's called landscaping, and then they park on it.
Okay.
So they've essentially widened their driveway, but they've not gone through the. So that's why we're saying, well, if we're trying to ensure, like, so I guess the current driveway widths are sufficient for 2 vehicles to park next to each other. So I think what people are adding on is, I don't know what they're parking there, but it's
Okay.
larger than
Okay.
that, right? So, and so
Thank you for, no, sorry, I noticed that there's a few other areas in town, so I was like wondering if that had been slipped in the wrong place in minutes, because I was like, that's interesting.
Well, I don't know if driveway widths, and we have to check with the administration, but I don't know if driveway widths are limited everywhere in town, but I know they're on the Greenwood run, so.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, as indicated in here, I mean, our between our land use bylaw and the traffic bylaw, it does state that you either need to clarify whether it's driveway or it's landscaping, and if it's landscaping, you are not required or you can't park on it. And so we have had some problems in other areas of town too, not just Greenwood. So, and in fact, some newer houses that have gone up in other places in town have been had that problem, so. But we just noticed when we were dealing with this particular one in Greenwood that obviously came with the area structure plan, that at that time there were a few others within Greenwood as well that were in violation of this. So as we move forward with this, depending on what happens with the ASP process, we'll follow up from there as to addressing accordingly. So,
Great, thank you. Any further questions about MSDA? If not, let's move on to committee of the whole. I don't know if anyone has anything from this. Otherwise, I'm going to ask for, go ahead, okay. Perfect, oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a comment in terms of the strategic planning session. I did contact Strategic Steps just actually late today. In between things, I did receive a response from them. They did indicate that with May 17th and 18th work to do that. So they were looking at May 17th would be a Tuesday evening, followed by a Wednesday day session. Now, if we chose to go with that, the 17th is also a council meeting night. So we would either have to cancel a council meeting, reschedule, or something to that effect as well. But I did talk to him about doing the Tuesday night and then into the next day sort of thing, because we did talk about that. And that was one of the weeks we said was perhaps an option date. So otherwise I'll have to get back to you with another one.
Thoughts from anyone?
Sorry?
Any thoughts on those dates?
I'm gonna start bringing my work calendar with me. Those were dates so that we gave to you, right?
We said that week of May 16th was a possibility.
Yeah.
Was there, sorry,
Okay.
was there any further follow-up for the Friday, Saturday?
I didn't go so much into that.
Okay.
I guess that's a good point. How is everybody, because I know that the council recommends you to often take time off of work.
Yeah.
Would this work for your schedule, or should we be looking at a Friday, Saturday?
Friday, Saturday would be much preferable. I could probably make this work if those are the only days available.
What about everybody else?
Check my third calendar.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's always been the same with me. When I take time off of work to do council things, it's really a revenue loss for me, right? So I do it because I love the work, but always a Friday, Saturday would be better for me. And I know we didn't present that though at our last meeting as potential dates to share with Strategic Steps.
I could do either.
Mhm.
And we can, or midweek. But again, I have to take off work, so.
Is there a possibility to just explore that with them? I know you had indicated that that's not the best for you. I'm just wondering with council, since like people do have to take time off of work, if you would be willing to like flex your schedule.
So we did that, we'd probably look at a full day Friday, half day Saturday then, is that what we'd look at? Or would you be looking at Friday evening and then Saturday?
I don't know, what are you guys thoughts?
Probably Friday evening, Saturday would be better, because if we do the full day Friday, then I would still have to take the day off work there too, right?
And then if you were flexing your schedule, could you take the Monday off and have a Sunday, Monday instead of a Saturday, Sunday?
I guess my next question is depending on what staff you may want to be there as well.
Do we need to have staff for strategic planning? Maybe he might be meeting with staff at a later time?
We just talked some staff survey, but I know we did talk about, and in the past, we had like our director of operations, maybe our development officer, and our planner potentially, and maybe our director of corporate services as well.
Has he given you an outline at all of like the actual work that, because I know that we had that initial one.
Yeah.
Has he given you one that's more firm now?
No, just that statement of work that I signed, which was pretty
Okay.
much, what was presented when he presented what they would do. I did talk to him and I have a message in, and he hasn't there. I guess, as indicated in their email, I talked to him way at the beginning of last week. They said everybody was away with the Easter weekend and stuff. Because I had left a message for even Ian in terms of, the community engagement and all that type of stuff as to how doing it because there was concern of May 17th or May 16th week being too quick in terms of there wouldn't be any input from public at that point. And I'm thinking at this point, unless they've done something to date, there may not be a whole bunch unless they really cram it in there. So yeah, they're not stating the work, which kind of outlined what they were planning to do, but I don't have a real timeline in terms of a week of now, and a week of next week, and a week of next week, and so on and so forth. So,
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor Reference.
Thank you. I'm just thinking that instead of trying to rush this through, because there is a cost associated with this, I think that we should take our time to do it right. So even if we had to push that back beyond the initial week that we were talking about, I think that would be more of a benefit than trying to cram it in kind of early and then not getting engagement with the public.
Because we had originally said like the week of the 16th of May or else into June, right? Like I think it was the,
Yeah, because I think
Yeah,
the
the
original
6th.
timeline was looking at like the 6th of June.
what are others' thoughts?
Well, I think that we should probably follow in the steps of other municipalities. And we should go away somewhere together and go do Friday night and go all day Saturday. You know, it just stimulates creativity, it stimulates team building, and it allows us to really dig in and not have that connection with our homes. One of the rules is you leave your cell phone. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've often spoken about doing that because we have huge success when we do it with other boards and other organizations.
I would agree with that. I think that that's I think that that would be really great for all of us. I think that being a part-time council, I think there's value in that. But being able to spend some more time with each other, it's not just in this chamber, and actually working together on different things. So I like that idea.
You know, in the past number of years with Green Acres Foundation, one of the things that we started doing was we started going up to Waterton. And we did the same thing, we do an evening, then we do the next day. And so in the evening, we'd have a different sort of team building. But you have seen from that experience has grown an incredibly cohesive, really forward-thinking board. And I can't say enough about how much that changed how we do our strategic planning. Rather than sitting in some stifling little space and just feeling tired and just wanting to go home, right? Like it's a very different approach that people take, especially, you know, if we have a facilitator up there in that space, right? You can get up and move around. But again, you know, it's about budget. So what do we want to invest our money in? Do we want to invest our money into sort of some of that really forward-thinking strategic planning? You know, is that a worthwhile investment for us to look at, right? I know that when we all put our name forward and when we all ran on council, you know, the community asked us to really step up, right? They asked us to become more engaged with the community and step up and start, you know, some good forward momentum. And I'm not saying that past council hadn't done that, but after 2 years of COVID, where people sat stagnant for a bit, they want forward momentum now, right? So I don't know what other people think about that, and I don't know if it's viable for us.
Yeah, looked at like, I think as Deputy Mayor Caldwell indicated in the past, we did go to different places aside from here. We did go to the southern, or that ethnic place. We did go to a couple of different hotels in Lethbridge, just and rented a room and had obviously lunches or whatever brought up and that type of stuff too, just so you're away from here. I think one year we even did some at the fire hall, but that's not really that conducive either, I don't feel. So.
Might I suggest, like based on this conversation and just as a suggestion that we consider something like Deputy Mayor Caldwell was saying, where maybe we look at Waterton, and maybe what we do is, because I like what you're saying about having like that team building type of thing that evening, but like maybe because from what I'm understanding, like our strategic planning process is a day and a half. Like so maybe we, if it works for people to take that Friday off of work, and then maybe we start earlier in the day, and then or like we could get there for the afternoon, And then it would be the full day on, like, on Saturday or end a little bit early and then be done. And I don't know like what the schedule would look like, so if we had staff coming, maybe they're there for the Friday, I don't know what his process looks like.
Yeah.
But they could potentially be there for that component.
Maybe, like I say, it's a matter of what staff you may want to be present to be part of the process. In the past, we've had, like you say, 2 or 3 of those staff come, and in some cases, when it's been in Lethbridge, you may have had your planner come in for a couple hours at a certain time, or whatever the case was, as opposed to the full day or day and a half, or whatever you were doing at the time, but.
So if we were doing it this way with Ian McCormick, and we include within that, part of it is an implementation plan, would that be when they're pulling in the planner and they're pulling in the staff? Or do you think we need, because, you know, when we're strategic planning, we're not really looking at what's absolutely doable in the moment. We're looking at the future of our community. We're looking at what are people saying that they would love to see, right? So it's kind of like, we're like the giant thought balloons. And all the staff are the balloon holders. Okay, was that a good analogy?
Reminded me of Disney.
To say, let's make this be viable. Let's make this come into action. And then, so maybe that's what it would look like, but I don't know until Ian McCormick. Like, I'm just surmising.
Would it be helpful for me to to touch base with Ian a little bit more on this to see like what that could look like and kind of, I guess, further explain, I think I have a pretty good idea what we're looking for. And looking at that from that aspect, because I think you're right, like, do we need staff there if they're being engaged in a different process beforehand? I don't know. Maybe more so when it does come to the operationalization of it, obviously. But I think that's, like, I guess we're guessing on a lot of things because we don't necessarily know his process.
Yeah.
And what he's looking for and needing from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could always touch base with him and just kind of chat with him and update everybody. If that's preferable, or I could leave it to you too, RK. It's totally up to you. Go ahead.
Well, like I say, in the message I left with him, I mean, I talked to this Logan Muller, who's the office manager in terms of dates, but I also did ask him some questions to that effect. And he said, well, Ian would be the one you'd want to talk to. So I did leave a message with Ian. He just has not, unfortunately, got back to me yet. But again, I think there was in the plan an implementation plan as part of the fees that we talked about too, which would involve staff. But again, in talking with Logan just a little bit, he said, well, it's up to each individual councils as to what staff they sometimes have at these things. So whether you want like 2 or 3 of your higher management ones, or you don't, I guess it's, with like Green Acres and whatever, from Deputy Mayor Caldwell's perspective, what kind of staff they would have there, maybe Donna, I don't know if you'll worry about that, but.
That's what we would have. We would have sort of 2, sometimes 3 of the higher level managers that would come out. And really, and it would be more about just vision, right? Envisioning where we could go. There was nobody really that we sat and talked about, how workable would this be? And those kinds of conversations didn't occur. And I know in the past when we brought in staff, that's kind of what our thought process was on it, to say, is this viable? Those kind, and I think when you're really embracing a true strategic plan, you don't want that, right? That's what comes afterwards, and you start to winnow it down to what's workable, right?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my previous suggestion, I guess, and say like, so what if we looked at something, if we could go back to strategic steps and say, we can look for something for a half day Friday, full day Saturday, looking at somewhere like potentially Waterton, that's a little, like, it's not super far away. And then just figuring out where the staff component comes into that. And I guess figuring that component out. Thoughts from everybody else?
Like, so, Arcade would be there regardless.
Yes.
Right, so I guess, for me, I kind of am hearing what Heather's saying. Yes, we need to think kind of, it's our vision, right? Not the vision. But I'm thinking if our administration needs, if we're discussing items, maybe around finances or something, we could have, maybe it is worth having the CFO there to support RK in his role, right? So I'm not sure, but is that too operational? I don't know. So this is where, I mean, maybe having our CAO there is enough. But I just, might have to let him provide some input on that, just depending what we're talking about, I guess, right? So, So it's kind of, who knows? But I like your plan.
Well, thank you. So I'm just suggesting that if you go back and say that, and looking at those weeks that we had talked about again, I'm just thinking if that works. If it doesn't, then I guess we're back to potentially Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, like I say, I have a call into him already anyway, so I can, if he doesn't get back to me this week, like, sounds like they're back in the office, then I'll touch base with them again and see what he's got to say, and let's go from there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now, can somebody make a motion to accept the committee meeting minutes?
I move that the committee minutes presented in this meeting are accepted.
Right, any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to the CAO report. Is there anything in your report, RK, that you would like to highlight? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the only one that I might comment on briefly is, as indicated in there, number 5-year restructure plan concept meeting. It did indicate that we had met with Stantec, so they are in the process of preparing a plan for that annex piece of land. We did have some suggestions too in terms of that, and they were obviously going to remap and do. They have kind of a schedule, so hopefully they will be touching base as indicated, as it says here, and then doing some community engagement and going through the process here in the not too distant future. The other one, just to briefly comment on, I guess, is the regional emergency management proposal. Did have a meeting today with CAOs and DEMs within Lethbridge County. I'd say a positive meeting in terms of the proposal. Again, some tweaks to what they presented in terms of, I guess in simple terms, they were talking more or less that there wouldn't necessarily be a designated regional DEM. They would kind of work with the fellow that's in Coaldale, and then they have, the county has a hired person as well. And then somewhat they were talking maybe an intern or an emergency coordinator position was the thing talked about, but he would still have to do a fair bit of groundwork at this end in terms of that. So it's kind of suggested that may, put extra load on the two individuals, Coaldale and the county, in terms of not being able to maybe address some of the needs that in our particular case, like I say, we need a fair bit of work on our plan and that type of stuff, for instance. So they were going to retweak some numbers. We also talked about the potential of the Alberta Community Partnerships grant, applying for that, which can give us up to a couple $100,000, I think is the maximum of that program, over a 3-year period to help get this thing in place if, councils buy into it. And obviously it's going to be up to each individual council whether they want to or not. That's the option that's there. So there will be, forthcoming here fairly shortly, I think, a retweaked proposal, and then possibly coming to councils with that proposal for a letter of intent at this point, and then from there seeing where it goes depending on who all buys in, and then they would start work on the preparation of the bylaws and the ministerial orders, approval and that type of stuff, which could take some time. And they were looking at kind of basically 2023 beginning to kind of have it in place on that basis. So, in terms of budgeting, et cetera, but they felt it would fit better into the budgets from there. So I just wanted to quickly update you on that. And I guess number 8, in terms of parade season, Director of Operations Lewis had just asked whether or not council's intentions were, assuming that COVID stays away to a better degree than previous summers, would we, look at attending some, parades in the area for various activities, Mars Days to, Coaldale Days to whatever the days are. We do have a float that's been redone But there's some signs and stuff that you would have to order, get kind of prepared in preparation for that, if the intent of council was to take part in some of those things. With the float as opposed to just your car and your sign.
What does the float look like? I don't even know if I know.
Probably hasn't been seen because it's been redone since COVID, so.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
but then we had a parade last year, was that the same one?
Probably, yeah, it would have been a not,
Oh, I
probably.
don't-
White, yellow, and gold,
Yeah.
purple and gold.
Oh, okay.
A little easier to, handle and do whatever. The other one was fairly difficult to, two people to raise the sides, lower the sides, take the tarps off and that kind of stuff.
I have two questions. One about number 6, the emergency management proposal. So just to clarify, when you say that they're tweaking it and coming back with it, it's like, so the county is making the regional proposal for everybody? Or
Coaldale.
Coaldale is
the
making
guy
it.
behind it because they're the regional fellow that's doing county right now.
Okay.
But the county has that one individual that they've hired as their regional services or fire services manager or something, emergency services manager. or
Or
something like that.
services coordinator?
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Just bottle on my laptop and push it down. About the parade, is there a schedule or is it just kind of if we see one and feel that we want to go to it, or is there like a schedule?
Well, usually, thank you, Madam Mayor. Usually what happens is the invitations come to the office here from various communities, the parade communities or their chambers or whoever's doing it. And then usually I will put it on my reports, as they come, and then determine if there's a council member that's available or wants to attend that. And that's how we kind of go, so.
I think that's great. I think we should attend as many parades as possible.
It is so fun.
I-
I was afraid when my boys were young enough to want to run around and throw candy and build it. Loved. Yeah.
I think that's great too.
Yeah.
I like parades, they're fun.
The intent of it is like, we're callers, think of us when we move here.
Well, it is, and it's also, when you take out youth and they go and they put candy in the hands of the seniors off of the Coalhurst float, everybody talks about Coalhurst and how wonderful those kids are. Like, it's a great thing to do, man.
So it sounds like
I totally
yes.
forgot about parades.
Councilor Evans?
Thank you, Mayor Montina. Just another quick follow-up, no other concerns about this golf course in town? I think there was just
Just the one so far, but
I guess no one good news.
I haven't really responded to it. I'm not sure if I'm going to send an email to some of the reps there. I'm not sure why 21 as opposed to 18. I don't know the answer to that. As far as the wetlands, I mean, I think obviously that was talked about as perhaps the potential to do 9 there, 9 in the minors. So it makes sense to more like a 9-hole golf course in different places, but obviously that's a little bit of time.
All right, any further questions? All right, so it sounds like we're gonna parade. It's gonna be great. And I am curious to see what this regional emergency management proposal or this thing is that's going to come this way. It sounds a little bit different than I think maybe our original conversations.
I think initially the way I was looking at it, it sounded a little different, but I think as a result of the discussions today, maybe somewhat going more to that. But again, if we do that, more cost.
Yeah.
But the cost proposed today was not any more than potentially what we've spent on in emergency right now in terms of a lot of stuff. And I think, like I say, when we were looking at the fire chief emergency services position or even a DEM position and that type of stuff, I think where we had to go was we had to pay a little bit more than we have in the past to get some people to do this. So I think it is an area that we're going to have to pay a few dollars to get the quality of stuff that we need out of that, which is pretty critical in a sense.
Well, it'll be interesting to see that. All right, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the CAO report?
I move that the CAO's report is hereby accepted as presented.
Great, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to council member reports or questions. So we're gonna start with Deputy Mayor Caldwell today.
Oh, thank you for that. We canceled one of our meetings within this last time frame. And so in truth, the only thing that I've had since our last council meeting is our MSDA meeting of this morning. And we'll have a conversation with that next time when the minutes come forward in the package. But I wanted to acknowledge the passing of one of our long-term community members, John Coombs, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that, because I don't think we have any way to, the number of hours that he's volunteered in our community, just making it a better place for everybody, and from our schools, our youth, our seniors, all of our different community builds. And so it's really important, I think, that we just acknowledge, and our condolences, of course, to his family and I guess to the community at large, really. So there's that I really wanted to bring to attention. Also, we'll see in our package, and I just wanted to speak to that just really quickly as well, that we did get our community note from Green Acres Foundation. Did you want me to send you that statement, or we don't have to have that whole statement in there? You just,
Oh, no, my computer isn't working.
Oh, it's not
My
working.
keyboard isn't working.
So you'll see in your package, we also got sort of some community information from Green Acres Foundation. And I know that everybody had an opportunity to read it, but I just wanted to bring to your attention that this is sort of our housing management body for this region. And just some of the really exceptional things that's happening there is that the statistics that they have before you here happened this is the annual report for 2021. And 99% of the lodge residents that were surveyed, which was all lodge residents, feel safe at home. And so that happened during COVID, when a number of seniors were feeling, isolated and frightened in their own homes. That, those lodge residents, the Lodge Foundation, 99% of those people felt safe at home there. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because I just feel like that was exceptional.
Thank you.
And that's it, thank you.
All right.
Yes, I had an MSD meeting as well this morning with Heather Caldwell. And I also had a ORSC executive meeting on the 14th. ORSC executive meeting, we also reviewed audited financials, similar to KPMG here this evening. And one thing of interesting of note is I asked some of the other members there how their municipalities handle ongoing donations requests from whoever, right? Last chance cat ranch or whoever it is, right? And from the MD of Willow Creek, apparently each councilor has a allotted funding that they can distribute as they see fit. So that was a unique model that I had not heard of before, but that's how they do it. But other municipalities, they just do the same as us. So from that group anyway. So it was a kind of Raymond from Cloud. The one near Vulcan, I can't remember what it's called. So India Vulcan, I guess. Yeah.
Vulcan County.
Vulcan County. Yeah. That's my report.
Great, thank you. So I have just a couple of things. So I have attended some different meetings. I've been doing some stuff with the Chinook Arch executive. So we actually just approved our financials as well, and did some stuff with the executive there as well. And so one of the things that's actually coming up that I would like to request permission to attend is there's the Alberta Library Conference, which is happening on next Friday. And it is just in Lethbridge. It's just an all-day event, and it looks lovely. And so I really love those library board people. They're really cool. We have a really great time. So I am requesting that. And so if someone would be so kind to make a motion for that, I would appreciate that.
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you.
I move that we approve Mayor Martina to attend the Schnurgard,
Southern Alberta Library Conference.
Southern Alberta Library Conference on April 29th, all day.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. And then a couple of other things that have kind of been coming up too is, last week I had a meeting with the REIT from Lethbridge County. And we had a really great meeting, just to talk about a lot of different things. One of the things we talked a lot about was collaboration and what it's like to work with neighboring municipalities and looking for opportunities for us to connect and even just learn from each other and, meet each other. And so I think that some of those opportunities will, if they've got different things that they may come to us, and if we have different things, it would be really great for us to start getting out there and meeting with them. Yeah, it was really a really nice meeting. We just had a nice coffee and chatted. The other thing is, so we did receive the letter. I did send this to you in our Teams, so you can see this earlier. This is for Colehurst High School. So each year, we actually just went over this policy in the policy bylaw committee. We sponsor different scholarships. And so we did receive the request, the letter of request from their administrative person, asking if this is something that we'd like to do. And so I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we give out an award for grade 8, 9, 10, 11 at $100 each. And then one for grade 12, it's $1,000, I think is what was in the policy. And so that is written within policy, and then there's they do either an essay or arcade indicated that even some of the grade 12s actually came in and presented. So that's just something that I guess that we need to make a motion would be preferable for this.
Yeah, I guess that we would participate in it, and then I can just notify them and set it up accordingly, so.
Sure. So would anyone like to make a motion that we support the CHS?
I will.
Okay.
I guess I move that we'll support the Town of Colehurst scholarships and the Mayor's Community Awards request.
Is that something we have to make motions on, if it's a matter of our policy in place already?
It's
Are
a
we making-
policy, I mean, generally we get the letter and we sort of said we would or would not, I guess, so. We haven't done it necessarily by motion all the time, but it doesn't hurt to get a motion that we would acknowledge receipt and indicate participation.
Thank you for that. I didn't realize it was an option that we would choose to take part in. I thought it was in our policy that we did do
Well,
these things.
it's there, but we've always brought it forward to council every year because there has been some thought about, well, there was a while we talked about not doing it almost at one point too.
There was no we attached to that conversation.
Well, just, yeah.
So we've got the motion on the table. Any further discussion on that? No. Did you have further discussion?
Yeah, just wanted to say, I think it's a good idea to have scholarships and kind of encourage that leadership and, the community building within the high school students. So I think it's a very good thing to have.
Great. I would agree, and I think that even within the policy, it says that provided that we're available, or some of us or all of us are available, we would go and present it or be part of that. And so I think, again, great opportunity for us to go into the community and do some cool stuff like that.
Yeah. What's the best about it is that it's about community leadership.
Mhm.
They get a lot of awards for academics in the school. This is more about, we ask them to, how do you see yourself as a leader? And that's the best.
Yeah.
We get some of the greatest people that we give awards to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll call the question. All in favor? Great, that's carried. Thank you. And I did have one other question, just in regards to what happens during the summer. We're getting close to that summer period, and I'm not sure how we usually normally, how do things proceed for council? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, we have traditionally gone to one council meeting in July and one in August. And then, sort of try to maybe not do every committee, the whole type thing or whatever, a little bit more relaxed or whatever, but one regular council meeting. And then special meetings, obviously, if necessary, if there is expedient things or some type of things that need to be addressed, can be called a special meeting to that effect. So that's generally. And then, so again, with that, if you're looking at doing that, it does require the canceling or scheduling things accordingly, because
Okay.
council meetings have to be canceled or rescheduled by a motion.
Okay. So then, does everybody know their summer plans at this point, or do we need a little bit more time, like maybe at our next council meeting to determine what summer looks like?
I have my holiday booked already.
Or would it be possible to just have Brendan like make the recommendations on the dates?
And usually I will put it in a report, probably in Mayor Ginger's or something, so.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, because if we could know that a little sooner rather than later,
Okay.
then I can kind of mark off time. That would be great, thank you. And I think the last thing for me is just that I finished up the EOEP course that I didn't know finances or whatever that one was about. It was really great, a lot better than Muni's 101. And so I really did enjoy that, and yeah, that was fantastic, so that's all. All right, Councilor Florence.
Awesome. April has been a less busy month, which has been good. I think that I mentioned I think it was a committee of the whole about the Highway 3 Training Development Association. So that was that was quite a while ago, actually, that was at the beginning of March, so I probably mentioned it. And then as well, Councillor Ackermans and I had the policy, and Mayor Martina, the policy bylaw review meeting. And then other than that, there was just the regular committee of the whole meeting. And then I just had one question about meetings for April, May, like with that schedule with the committee of the whole, because it's another like big one, or is it like a back-to-back committee of the whole? Is it, or am I just imagining it for April? So, because next week would be a committee of the whole, and then the third would be a committee of the whole, so then is the 10th a council meeting?
Third would be council, first and third.
Oh, first and third. Oh, I'm just looking at second and third. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying.
And Councillor Ackermans.
Yes, so from April 6th to 8th, I attended the Economic Development Alberta Summit in Kamonaskis. I'll summarize this in an email to everyone, but there was multiple panels and breakout rooms on a variety of topics. Some of them were more general, like the economy, infrastructure, agri-food, energy, life sciences, visitor economy. Breakouts were on things like digital transformations for small and medium businesses, different programs from manufacturing groups out there, greening of communities, value of innovation ecosystems, and then there was a few more just kind of general talks on like the geopolitics and how it impacts our communities, and the economic forecast coming up. So it was bombardment of information. I'm still kind of summarizing my notes, but I'll share those with you guys. They do have some of the sessions that I didn't attend in the breakouts listed on the website, so I can give you guys a list of that. And if there's anything that anyone's curious about, I can always look in there and kind of summarize it for you. If there's a topic that I didn't attend, if you guys would like. Besides that, I had the policy bylaw review meeting on April 11th and the committee of the whole meeting on April 12th. And then I guess just upcoming, I have a South Grow executive board meeting on the 25th, and then they got the South Grow quarterly meeting on the 28th.
That's about it. I heard that was a really great conference, and I heard from a couple of different people.
I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad that you were able to go. That's great. Okay, so unless anyone has any questions, we're gonna move on.
I have two questions, sorry.
Yes.
Have we heard back from Palliser on the school district process at all?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I just received an email today, actually, basically from Tony Montina, who's a representative on Palliser. He just indicated that most of the questions that I'd asked would be a Dexter type answer question. So he asked Dexter to respond and CC him on that, and haven't seen that yet. So.
And then my other question was on the blood tribe. I think Scott, I think you had volunteered to reach out to them at some point.
Yeah, I had a contact there that I asked their CAO to reach out to, and then I don't know if anything ever came about that, but I can reach out to them again and kind of see if I can kickstart that again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I did send an email to the contact that Councillor Ackermans had sent, but similar to previous correspondence with them, we don't generally get a whole lot of correspondence back. So.
Great, thank you for the update. Okay, so now we'll move on to external reports. The first being the Green Acres Foundation report to the community. And Deputy Mayor Caldwell, you kind of spoke to this a little bit. Is there anything else that that you think needs to be highlighted from this RK or Deputy Mayor Caldwell? Or should we just move or make a motion to accept the external report?
I'm just going to assume that everybody had a chance to read through it because it was so fascinating. Like
It's lovely.
10% of their revenue is really municipal requisitions, only represents 10% of the revenue. Which is, it's kind of important to note that as well.
Great. Good.
Just like a comment about this report, I always find it interesting when it's the kind of like the broad, the foundations, right? Like it's kind of like FCSS, the reports aren't very specific to each community. And it's something that always kind of just like irks me a little bit, but it's a good report. I wish it was more specific, but yeah.
To the community.
Yeah.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the external reports? Or report?
We can do that.
All right,
I move that the external reports presented in this meeting are accepted.
any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right, so now we're gonna go to correspondence, and Councilor Potter, you requested that we pull out the Alberta municipalities collecting education property taxes.
Yes, I was looking through this item. Sorry, I was pull it up here. It's about transparency rates. It's about where, and why these taxes are collected, and I think, you know, in line with what people are asking about, you know, when we look at municipal franchise tax, for example, fee or whatever you want to call it. I think a pamphlet like this might help people, you know, understand where these taxes, how they're collected and how, you know, and how it impacts them. So, and I think it might be a good thing to include something like this when we send out our tax assessment notices. And I'm wondering if there's, I mean, I don't know if we have to have this print out verbatim, but I just, I think it seems like a pamphlet that could help with our open and transparent mindset, I guess, to our community, right? To share that information with them so they know. So those kind of my thoughts, and I don't know what other, I mean, I guess it depends on how far you want to take it. I mean, there's a lot of different taxes that we collect. And so, I mean, is this just, because this one is being brought up by Alberta municipalities that maybe is most relevant at this time, but I don't know if there's others too, or other information things that we also include. I'm not sure what's planned for this year, and maybe it's similar to last year's, or I'm not sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Generally, what we do is do a budget sheet once the budget is approved, and kind of does give in the past, our Director of Corporate Services done kind of like a pie graph, which kind of showed, you know, where your tax dollars went in terms of the various departments within the municipality for tax dollars. And I think it even had one where it showed like the Green Acres and, you know, those types of ones on there as to what dollars those were. And maybe not a chart, but definitely information as to what dollars were paid towards that. So it is kind of information budget sheet that we've done, news release, I guess if you want to call it. So I was going to do something like that. We've done it for quite a number of years. So.
Okay. Well, if we can address it in something like that, I'm not too fussed if it, you know, I don't think we have to take this exactly, but if it's addressed in another way, I'm interested to see how that turns out, I guess.
Go ahead, Councilor Ackland.
Thank you. Just looking at I just pulled up the previous one for the 2021 operating capital budget highlights from the website. And it does show the breakdown in the tax rate breakdown. So our municipal taxes are 73%, where the school requisition is 25%. So I think even with that breakdown showing, I think having that pamphlet in there to show why that money is kind of being collected on behalf of the government, I guess, for that would be beneficial, just to add a little bit of transparency showing kind of the reasoning behind it, right? Because if you look at that pie chart and you see 25% for schools, you might be questioning, why is this coming out of a local municipal property tax, right? So I think it would be good to include.
I think that with this, there's a lot of different things that could be done with it as part of the education component, right? Because like we've even talked about like the board stuff or any of those other fees. This could be a blog post, it could be a lot of different things that could kind of all complement each other. But like it does make a lot of sense to have something like going with the tax assessment or whatever, but looking at different ways to supplement it and utilizing the resources that are already available, like such as a spin through the province or, you know, all those different things would be great. All right, does that help with your thoughts on that? Yep.
That's
Okay.
good,
So we, Councillor Florence, you did also request that we talk about barrier free and the National Public Works Week. They weren't included, I don't know what section they're under, or supposed to be under, but I'm gonna say that they're under correspondence. So let's talk about the barrier free stuff right now, if that works for you.
Sure, thank you.
Does that work? Because I don't know where else this would live.
That's fine.
Okay, we're gonna throw it in there.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So when I was just reading through, the packages about things we wanted to pull out, I seen it as something we want to pull out because when I was reading through it, the message from Barrier Free Alberta, I thought it was something that we could very easily do by putting out a statement. I also thought it would be interesting if they could do a presentation to us, and maybe that would lead to like an assessment of our spaces or something like that. But anyway, I just thought it would be interesting to see where it could go. And I like that they're doing a week as a campaign. I think that's a really cool campaign idea. And I would like to see Culvers be barrier free, so it would be cool to see a presentation like that. So that's why I wanted to add that.
Great. I have a question about that. Is this something like, so I know that a lot of like, sometimes we'll get these different requests saying like, can you designate this day or this week or this whatever as barrier free, or what are they calling this one? National Accessibility Week. And like, we can make a proclamation or whatever you want to call that. Is that something that like often happens here? Or is this something that like how does this kind of thing usually work, I guess?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Traditionally, council have not declared any weeks,
Okay.
or very few. I mean, I think maybe seniors week, perhaps maybe volunteer week. But I mean, we could have weeks and days and months and years, almost every council meeting if you really wanted to.
It's true.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, because there are a number of these that come across, and that's why council has traditionally not ever passed them, other than those very few. But, I mean, again, it's up to council today.
Right. Any thoughts on this?
I totally agree with Councilor Florence about making our town accessible and barrier free. I kind of wonder, you know, like you say, we have a lot of weeks and months that we could be throwing our support around to and days. I think maybe it's better to be selective about, you know, the most important ones perhaps, maybe in my mind, so that we can have greater emphasis on them instead of just, you know, always jumping to the next thing. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. So I don't know. Yeah, the assessment, or what do you call it? Yeah, it's an assessment, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Report on how Culvers is doing would be interesting, I guess.
So would we, I know the city of Lethbridge did something like this 2 years ago. So would council members take part in that?
I think Lethbridge, they hired a consultant, and
We had Jeff Carlson and I'm trying to think of her name. Bridget Mearns, out in wheelchairs, trying all curves and trying to get buses and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was more just for show, just to bring more attention to it, right? To say, you know, we've got some pretty good challenges in some of these places downtown.
I think that one of the issues that I'm having is that because this is just like asks for donations or whatever's, letter writing, et cetera, is that like we haven't gone through an entire year, so we don't even know what's happening for the rest of the year. So it's really hard to determine what our priorities are when we don't even know what's coming up. But I do think that this is something that you know, is like it is very prevalent. I know that we do have people living in our community, and I think that this is something that I am supportive of. I think it's just more of a, you know, we don't have to necessarily declare it as some type of big thing, but maybe we participate in it and could get that presentation and sign the support form or something of that nature. I think that this is again something that like if we were to have somebody who was doing maybe communications, we could look at doing something where it would be something like Deputy Mayor Caldwell said, where we could actually go up there and try these sort of things and bring a little more awareness to it. But I don't feel like we are in that place right now to achieve that. So what, would you like to make a motion on this, or what would you like to do with this?
If I were to make a motion, I would maybe make a motion that we would sign the support form as, like, I guess it's from this, it's recent, yes, as an individual for me. So like, would I do it on my own, or is it something that we make a motion to sign as a council? And then if it gets, like, if it goes forward, or if it gets defeated, I guess that's the direction to go? Or is it just that we've had this conversation, because part of this is just sharing it at your next council meeting, so we've had a conversation about it, so, I don't wanna like dampen it, but I mean, part of, bringing awarenesses to this, important topic is discussing it, which we're doing, right?
I guess if we make a motion and it's defeated, what our line would be, but then you wouldn't be able to sign, whereas if we just don't make a motion, we have the option to do as you see fit.
Okay.
And all the council does, right, so.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will say that just for your information, I mean, in terms of, sidewalk works and that type of stuff, our Director of Operations has, taken a proactive approach to make sure that we do have wheelchair accessible intersections. Even when we talked about the, doing some work there across from the Legion and by the pharmacy or whatever, again, we wanted to have that wheelchair accessible corner there. And certainly even in our buildings, I mean, we've made so that we have the push button scenario on here. And things, any buildings obviously that we do, have to have that kind of capability. That's just a must anyways. So, so we have taken some steps towards that in moving forward. So,
Yeah, and I think we could. I mean, there's obviously always more you can do, I guess. But you can put like Braille, for example, on signage and audible signals at crosswalks. Right. So there's, that's helping those who are visually impaired as well, right? So.
I mean, if we were community leaders in this though. We were the first playground in Palliser School Division to have a barrier-free playground, to install an accessible playground with the, but then the school has gone and removed that matting, and they had to put in mulch. Yeah, because the pouring place was more than double the cost of that matting, and they said it had a certain lifespan, but which is really a shame.
Sorry, so I guess at this point, we could, I would propose maybe just leaving it and then individually we can sign it.
Okay.
Yeah, is that agreeable or would you? No.
I'm gonna leave that on your shoulders. I would support you either way.
Yeah.
So,
Just a question, then, can we have admin forward on that email so that we'd be able to click the link to be able to sign that?
oh, that's a good idea.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. I think that's really great. The next one is National Public Works Week.
So I guess I don't want to get back into declaring it as Public Works Week because we just talked about that, but one of the things that was point A about this, and then point B is when they talked about like hosting an exhibit or something like that, and I know you talked about communication person, but I think it would be so great, and even you see on Facebook when things are shared about what's happening in town, they seem to get a lot of traction. I thought it would be great to do a little pop by at like the storm pond, the new storm pond or something like that, like as a bit of an engagement session and an education thing. Again, I would echo what Mayor Martino was saying, like I'm not sure if we're there yet, but I think it would be really cool. And I find it really interesting to hear our Director of Operations, Kevin Speaker, to learn about these things when we go on the tour. We've had many people ask all of us about stormwater plan over there, and so yeah, anywhere where there's an area where we can just educate people and be engaging, I always think is good. So that's why I thought to bring it up.
Yeah, I think that's really I like what you're saying, and maybe there's something that we could do, because this is not until May 15th to 21st, so we have a little bit of time. That maybe it could be kind of one of our open house style things, whether it's at, I don't know, whatever the cool thing is that's public works related. We could potentially have something there if administration would be open to looking at that and I guess, providing some support that way, because I don't think that we can necessarily talk about that. Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. I like that. Other thoughts?
I do, and I think that we need to feed you guys.
Yes.
We need to add that piece to it, okay? Ready and resilient is actually a really good theme coming out of COVID, because these guys have just been on the ground working nonstop, right? I mean, all of our town staff have been, but, you know, this would be kind of a, yeah, thank you for bringing that forward.
So is that something that we could do, or we could potentially, as Deputy Mayor Caldwell has indicated, like arrange like whether it's a lunch or something that they could, you know, even if it's pizza or whatever that may be. I don't know their work schedules or anything like that, but if we could provide them with a little bit of. Did you have to go ahead?
Yeah, well, I thought popped in my head, I'm just kidding, sorry, everybody. It's actually, which is what you're saying, Deputy Mayor Caldwell, is, Coaldale, just did that, they actually have a committee that they meet, it's a council and staff committee, and they meet and they lunch. But then they were sharing it on Facebook, and I thought that was really interesting, so, sorry, I got it all erratic there. The hand raising. But yeah, I just think it's such a cool idea, right? And then to just share that with everybody. And even though I'm in a different town, I was like, wow, that's really cool. So, yeah. Really get back in.
So I guess I'm just confused as to exactly what you want to or don't want to do with this then?
From what I'm hearing, I think it would be really great if we could potentially arrange some type of, whether it's a town hall or it's something to educate people on some public works type of thing, whether it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, like whether it's the wetlands or something like that, where it can bring some, I guess, some life to whatever it is that they could potentially do. It's an opportunity, I think, for us to potentially go out and meet with people as well. And then also to just recognize the work that these people have done, and provide them with some type of food, whether it's coffee or lunch or something like that, in recognition of this week.
So like town hall, just take a coffee, come go type town hall things, what do you think, pick a date, time, or whatever for an hour or two?
Yeah, I think, is that what you were thinking?
Definitely, yeah. I guess like in, like just in my head, you know how we always go by the stormwater plant, the pond, and there's that 600 or that whatever $1 million sign there. And I think it would actually be interesting if we were to like set up a table and get some signage and just, I know you can't park right there because you can't pull up, but it would just be so interesting to do something right there, right? And just have a little bit of like an information campaign. This is totally two different ideas with the lunching and the education, but yeah.
Or is it something like, because like there's a bunch of different ideas on here too, that like maybe your public works group would look at this and say, you know, we really want to highlight this or have ideas around that. I'm not sure if that's, if they're into that kind of stuff, but like if they have ideas, because I know that like you guys have, a couple of you I think have gone and toured some things with Kevin. I haven't done that, but have said that it's very informative. And so maybe they have some ideas of things that they could potentially highlight that could be educational or an engagement worthy type of something, to help celebrate, I guess, the work that they're doing and the things that we have here. Because like, again, I think that this is where that communications or engagement person could help them set up a display that could be here in the town office. Or maybe that's something that they would want, but I don't know. I think that there's, that's that piece that we're missing right now. But if there's a way that we can highlight this somehow, so it does go to that education component and bring people in.
Thing about there, just a suggestion, the staff volunteer appreciation event committee has a meeting scheduled for next week. Would this be something that maybe we could discuss there a little bit more in detail, and perhaps have our director of operations pop in for, you know, a few minutes or whatever, just to discuss a little bit? I mean, it kind of follows the same thing, appreciation sort of thing. I know if you look at, you know, this is National Public Works Week. I mean, before the end of April, we have Administrative Professionals Day as well, which, you know, in the past, generally, you know, the Director of Corporate Services and myself have recognized, you know, our basic, you know, 3 office people, as well as council is, and, you know, sort of on lunch for that sort of thing too, or whatever. So, so again, you know, and even personally, I mean, I have recognized Public Works Week, you know, bought them ice cream cake for different things in the past too, just for the sake of it too, eh? So the other part is May 12th to 21st is I was gonna say it's right during spring cleanup, but it's right before, so that's actually good too, because sometimes it's almost coordinated with that, which is, makes it ugly too, depending, because they're busy those days, but it is before, so.
I think that that's a great suggestion to go there to figure out, what we could do to recognize. And I think that like whenever there's those type of weeks, like you're talking about administrative professionals days or whatever, I think that those things are kind of important to recognize staff, and I'm very supportive of doing things for those. But I think that it makes sense to go to that volunteering staff recognition or appreciation event. Community.
Our public works guys, so anytime we have those recognition dinners, they always win the best prizes. Who's there?
Must be great.
Especially Bill. Bill always seems to walk away with armfuls. Right? Yeah.
All right, so just, that's
Sorry, well, sorry, just one thing, I'm not sure, are we, birthdays this Friday? I know it's too last minute to do anything big, but I wonder if we could just post something on social media about it.
tell people to shut off their lights.
Whose birthday is it?
Earth Day.
Oh, Earth Day.
Earth's birthday.
Yes, it is Earth Day on Friday. I thought you wanted us to post somebody's birthday on our social media. I was like, maybe we better check with them first. Yeah.
We can check with you, we might not get back to you.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve, to acknowledge the correspondence?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right, so let's move on to other business. The first is the Alberta Municipalities registrations open for the next EOEP service delivery course. Is there anyone that is interested in attending that one?
I'm very interested in attending that one.
Okay.
That's something that's been popping up a lot, right? As we open back up again. Yeah.
What day is that one on again?
Well, it starts actually tomorrow,
Okay,
and then it runs every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30. And I'm actually good for every Wednesday. You guys, I'm just gonna sit there with my iPad tomorrow. I'm sorry.
good job.
You guys will enjoy it as well.
I think it's awesome that you're gonna take this. I very much want to take it. It does not work for my schedule, so I will look forward to the next time.
Yeah, that's the same with me too. Councilor Ackermans?
Down the line would be better for me.
Perfect, okay. I will make a motion, that Deputy Mayor Caldwell, is hereby authorized to attend the elected officials education program service delivery course beginning April 20th, 2022. Any, additional questions, comments? All in favor? Great, that's carried. Okay, the next, item that we have here is Lethbridge County regarding the development application permit. And Ark, I'm going to turn this over to you if you're able to bring forward.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So basically, because it's indicated in the cover letter here, it's, within our Lethbridge County land use bylaw, or within that fringe sort of area. They provided us with the opportunity to comment. It's requesting a waiver to the setback from the CP right of way, from 75 to 69.72 meters. Again, traditionally, we have brought most of these forward to council. In some places, I know it's just dealt with by, the planner, development officer, administration, and not necessarily through the council. So I brought it here this time on that basis. I have obviously got comments from our development officer as well as our town planner in terms of any input they feel they have in regards to this, and they don't have any real concerns with it at all. There's a map that kind of shows where it is. It's just off the Kip Road there, basically is where it is. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob and Joanne Ramius. It's their property that they've now subdivided, or in the process of subdividing, and this is a portion of it to actually put this residential dwelling and stuff on it slightly closer to the right way, which again is indicated it's it's kind of a spur track. It's not a heavily utilized track at the present time. Not to say at some point in the future it may or may not be, but at this point not too heavily utilized, other than some storage once in a while. So no real concerns brought forward from people in terms of development to the planning side of things.
You know, we just,
Go ahead.
we just went through something like this, not this scenario, but learning about compelling reasons for why you would give waivers. This one certainly fits within that, if it was even of interest to us. But it seems that it's not really, particular interest to us as a community.
Councillor Butcher, did you hear that?
I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, I move that the council of the town of Coolhurst hereby authorize Chief Commissioner Officer Howda to submit a letter of Lethbridge County indicating that the town has no concerns with the following number. So, 2022-060, new residence with setback waivers, CPROW, at the location of plan and is presented in April 11th, 2022 application.
Any further discussion? Call question, all in favor? Great, that's carried. And I'm now going to request a motion to adjourn at 8:45.
Do it.
All right,
I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:45 PM.
perfect. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried.
It's remarkable.
Here we go. That was good, guys. Never got done that early yet.
Well, I have to say, the one day that you were not here, we were pretty close to that, weren't we? Weren't we about quarter?
Oh, so you're blaming me. I see how this is going.
No, you're saying it's a team effort.
I think I was probably just, I'd said a number of times in the interest of time.
Show you this, actually.
What is that?
It's Western.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
a beautiful tree.
Yeah.
It's very, very nice, but look what they all have.
They're really gonna shut off the street too.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
That's the thing, the guys don't have all the money. That's the thing, guys that have all the money.
Do they have all the money?
Well,
$10,000, they can give to whoever they want.